So when Dick Williams was a young prospect in the Brooklyn Dodgers organization, which eventually turned to the LA Dodgers, Dick Williams had played a few of his minor league games in Brooklyn's affiliate in the International League in Montreal. So after his great success as a manager, including the Impossible Dream years in Boston, the 2 titles in Oakland World Championship, 72 and 73, and the years he ended up being with the California Angels after the falling up with Charlie Finley, a lot of people thought, well, eventually he's going to find his way in the National League, and a lot of people are hoping the Montreal Expos would be that team. Now, when Williams was fired as Angels manager in 1976, it was 18 games below 500. Now, his tenure in Anaheim turned out to be a miserable one. He did not have nearly as much talent as he had to work with in Boston and Oakland, and the Angels didn't respond to Williams' somewhat authoritarian managing style. They finished last in the AL West again in 75, and during the 75 season, Red Sox pitcher Bill Lee stated the Angels hitters were so weak they could hold batting practice in a Boston Sheraton hotel lobby and not hit the chandelier. And ironically, Bill Lee would end up in Montreal later. Williams responded by having his team actually do so before the game, using wiffle balls, bats, and balls, but what the Red Sox, until the hotel security put a stop to it. Now, in 77, in national news in Canada, he returned to Montreal as a manager of the Expos, where he remained for 5 years, which was, of course, his longest stint as a manager, and who had just come off 107 losses in a last-place finish in the NL East. While 77 was a key year, they were moving from Jerry Park to Olympic Stadium, which was kind of renovated for baseball, but it still was an eyesore for four-base play. Team president John McHale had been impressed with Williams' efforts in Boston and Oakland and thought he was what the Expos needed to finally become a winner. Now, after cajoling the Expos into improved but below 500 performances in his first 2 seasons, he turned the 79 and 1980 Expos into pennant contenders. The team won over 95 games both years, the first winning seasons in franchise history. The 79 unit won 95 games, the most that the franchise would win in Montreal ever. However, they finished second each time, the eventual world champions. They were a couple of games behind the Pirates in 79, and of course the disastrous weekend at home against the Phillies where Mike Schmidt home run put us out of our misery. Williams was never afraid to give young players a chance to play, and his Expos teams were flush with young talent, including Andre Dawson, Gary Carter, Warren Cromartie, later Tim Raines, great pitching as well, Larry Parrish, veterans like Chris Spire, and Ellis Valentine. Now, with a solid core of young players and a fruitful farm system, mostly done by themselves, not through trade, the Expos seemed to lock to contend for a long time to come. But Williams' hard edge alienated numerous players, especially his pitchers, and ultimately wore out his welcome. He labeled pitcher Steve Rogers a fraud with a king of the mountain syndrome, maybe Tourette syndrome, because he was always like this, meaning that Rogers had been a good pitcher in a bad team for so long, he was unable to step up when the team became good. Did this predict Monday on Monday? Let's find out. Williams also lost confidence in closer Jeff Reardon, who the Montreal front office had acquired in a much publicized trade with the Mets for former All-Star and head case Ellis Valentine. Now, when the 81 Expos performed below expectations in the first half, he was fired during the pennant drive on September 7th. With the arrival of the easygoing successor, longtime Expo management member Jim Fanning, who restored Reardon to the closer's role, the inspired Expos made the playoffs for the only time in their 36-year history in Montreal. They did beat the Phillies in a very, very tight 5-game series with Donald Sutherland cheering them on, but they lost in heartbreaking fashion to Fernando and Rick Monday and the eventual world champion Dodgers in a 5-game NLCS. Now, you knew what they were getting with Dick, but the problem was who was going to replace him. And all the managers who replaced Dick Williams had the talent, but he couldn't do really anything with him. Now, Williams was not unemployed for long, however. In 82, he took over the Padres, leading to the 84 World Series. But Dick Williams' overall stay in Montreal can be best described, not say as a survival, but something that a lot of people felt stabilized the franchise. By the 90s, when they were not making the playoffs and not being stable, they eventually lost the franchise. Now, just for a lot of people who don't know this, ladies and gentlemen, he had coached in Toronto of the International League for 2 seasons, which was a Boston affiliate before being called up in the miracle year of 67. Now, 67, we have to remember, there were only 92 and 70. So it wasn't what do you call a super change. Carter Stremski had a lot to do with that. Now, the 3 years he was in Oakland, he won 3 divisional titles, and the team that he never brought to the World Series in 71 won 101 games. Now, in California, it was disastrous from the start, 36 and 48, 72 and 89, and 39 and 57. Now, the miracle 77 season for Montreal, where he got 75 victories, 76 the next season, but he jumped to 95, 90, and then 44 into the divisional series. Now, what's kind of ironic about this, ladies and gentlemen, with Dick Williams, he coached, all the teams he coached were 500 better, except for just a couple of seasons. 74 the short season in California, 75 the bad season, and 76 before he was fired. The 2 years in Montreal with 75 and 76 wins could have easily been 500. These years with San Diego, he only became a loser when he went over to Seattle again. And on average, ladies and gentlemen, he would get you 75 to 100 wins. But like I said, he had his favorites. Now, ironically, ladies and gentlemen, he managed in major leagues for 21 seasons. Okay? With a record of 17, 34, and 1580. Now, in AAA plus major leagues. 1,571 wins in the major leagues and 163 and 294. So when he came to Canada, he could speak Canadian. But I think what was going on, not saying mind games, but Billy came to Montreal and he basically was there to kind of keep it cool. But Jeff Reardon we didn't really have a closer until Jeff Reardon. That was a big part of the problem. But I think the veterans on the team, Gary Carter, Andre Dawson, Cromartie a little bit, Steve Rogers, were pretty well fed up with him at the time. Now you got to understand, Gene Mauch was leading that team for a number of years, and Gene had the same problem, my way or the highway. But this was the modern baseball teams who were going. The National League teams, especially National League East teams of the late 70s, early 80s, were very strong mentally. Most of their players, I mean, you look at Pete Rose in Philadelphia, Dave Parker in Pittsburgh, Keith Hernandez in St. Louis, Dave Kingman with the Cubs, Carter, Dawson, Cromartie, and what they call the Youth Corps in Montreal. They weren't going to take any crap. I think Dick Williams ranks, to me, the second best manager in Montreal history. Felipe Alou could take half a can of Campbell soup and turn into a turkey dinner. But Dick Williams, again, he righted the ship, but the problem is, after a 5-year plan, if it's not there, I don't think he got over losing to Pittsburgh in 79 because the amount of games they won just were with, duct tape and a whole bunch of scotch tape because bringing over Stan Bonson and people like that, I mean, Woody Fryman was old as the hills. But, Dick Williams had my respect. I never thought he'd coach in Montreal. See, when I watched him in Oakland, I didn't know he had that background with Toronto and Montreal. But my dad said it right away, watch if Montreal don't sign him from the Angels. See, Montreal was getting kind of in a free agency mood. Dave Cash and a few other players later, Al Oliver, Ron LaFleur, so it was kind of freaky. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story of Dick Williams' interesting tenure in Montreal, leading the Expos. If you like what they're doing here, we're a Montreal Expos Vintage Podcast. Let us know in a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.